We will
learn from a test lesson with Rabash. We will read from the study of the 10 Sefirot, volume 2, part 5. We are in the inner light, item 44. Enter the lesson with Rabash.
If so, he does not explain what is written above. What is written above? And look at item 44. It is the same matter in all the vak, since when the lights are given in them, they turn their anterior and shine downward, since it is precisely Binah who did not turn her anterior to Chesed. This he no longer explains below at all. He relies on what is written above, meaning that Binah cannot give the hay before she was refined from phase 2 to phase 1. This is what it says here. As for them giving to one another, there does not need to be any refinement because they are all one phase of coarseness. What you say, that the light of Malchut has no light, where is this written? Here it is written, when it says Malchut, it refers to the 10 Sefirot that exist on the level of Malchut. We must say coarseness. There was a coupling on the coarseness. So we learn, when we say root, what does root mean? It's the screen. The screen of Malchut, it has a root. So there are also 10 Sefirot there. We're speaking about Malchut. And everything that we're speaking about, we're speaking about Malchut. However, there are 10 individual Sefirot. They're called the 9 first Sefirot. Yeah, this is Malchut. That is another matter. We're speaking of a level or phase. What does phase mean? Coarseness. This is what we're already speaking about, Malchut, of the degree. And if so, if the question is asked, why Bina cannot give the hay before she was refined, I repeat what we've learned until now. Here it is written as follows. He asks, why the light that emerged on the 2 phase 2s in the vessel of Chokhmah, that light was given to the vessel of Binah before the phase 2 of Chokhmah was refined to phase 1. And afterwards, the phase 2 was refined to phase 1 and given to the vessel of Binah. And afterwards, we learn that there was a coupling on the 2 phase 2s from which the hay emerged. This hay cannot be given to Chesed before Binah was refined from phase 2 to phase 1. And unlike the light that Binah received, it wasn't said that phase 2 of Chokhmah must be refined. So his explanation is, from the perspective of the vessels, Abba ve'Ima come out as one and stay as one. This is Gar and Zeranbin, from the perspective of the vessels. Unlike phase 2 from phase 1, this is Gar and Vak, meaning this hay that has this rule of Gar in phase 2, the Vak cannot receive. Now he says that we must know that all of the Vak are one phase, one quality. When we say the vessel of Chokhmah made a coupling, if the coupling was on the vessel of Chokhmah of the Guf, and afterwards gives to Bina of the Guf, or if we say at the time that it was shining in the Guf, when there was a refinement in the Guf of the 2 phase 2s, there was a coupling in the Rosh. It is imparted to the Guf in the same form that was passed from the Rosh. From Chokhmah to the Rosh, to Bina of the Rosh, and above all, the branch below receives from the root above. As we learned in the beginning. What did we learn? What is written on page 300, item 10, and then the female of the Keter, which is the phase of coarseness of phase 3, must also receive from her upper root, which is the upper Chokhmah. So what is the order? The root of the upper Chokhmah descends to Bina, and from here the entire order descends downwards. One can also say here that the phase 2 from Chokhmah to Bina and from Malchut of the Rosh descends downwards to the Guf. And similarly, as I say, the Hey, one can also say the same, but he does not say it. Only there, how does he say? According to the rule, we must say this way, but he does not say it. When we learn above all of the refinements in the nekudot, the dots, even in the te'amim, the tastes, even in the first expansion, we also learned how it was in the Rosh of the degree. And here too, it was in the Rosh of the degree. According to the implication of what is written here, that we're talking about the bodies, the gufim, is correct. It implies that the vessel of the Guf gave to the vessel of Bina of the Guf, and the vessel of Bina of the Guf gave to phase 1. According to what we learn in a general way, all the nekudot, the dots that emerge first from the Rosh and afterwards are revealed in the Guf. If so, there is no proof here that it shines in the Guf. Afterwards, item 45. I begin. After that, it returned to being expanding in Keter, and then not expanding in Chokhmah and Bina, since they both rise there. We learned the opposite. Since they both rise there, therefore it becomes expanding in Keter. It is also not expanding in Chesed because it rose to Bina. At the time when there is no Chokhmah for Chesed, it rises to the vessel of Bina, which is considered like a baby that needs its mother. And it is expanding in Gevurah, also only Chasadim. And that it is not expanding in Tiferet, that also Tiferet has no Chasadim, so no Chokhmah. And then it is expanding in Netzach, also Chasadim, and not expanding in Hod, also Chokhmah that has departed. Then Hod turned its anterior, as it is written here, and gives the 2 lights to Yesod. Which 2 lights? We will see. And then it is expanding in Yesod. Then Yesod turns its anterior and shines to Malchut in all the Vak. What does etc. in all the Vak mean? The meaning of the matter implies that there is no refinement here, apparently, meaning from Yesod to Malchut, there is no refinement here. So let's see how he explains it below. Item 45, inner light. Return to being expanding in Keter, etc., not expanding in Hod. It has already been repeatedly explained above that the bestowal of Bina to the vessel of Vak, when Bina is refined from phase 2 to phase 1, and then expanding in Chesed, then the phase 2 was refined both in Chokhmah and in Bina. It causes the to be expanding in Keter. In that state, the posterior of the vessel of Keter dominate, preventing any illumination of Gar, any illumination of Chokhmah in the Partzuf. Even in the vessel of Chokhmah, there is no Chokhmah. Much less so in the vessels below, which receive from the vessel of Chokhmah. Here, hence the illumination of Gar, the illumination of Chokhmah, departs from the vessel of Hod.
סיימנו שיעור עם הרבש, ולפני שנעבור לשיעור הבא מהסדרה,
We have concluded our lesson with Rabash, and before we move to the next part, we will hear a calibration of our intention from the friends.
An excerpt of intention for a lesson with Rabash. Question. This is from Rab's lesson. Student, how do the surrounding lights affect if there are no vessels? Rab said, the surrounding light does not need vessels. A vessel means a screen and reflected light that is already after a person achieves scrutiny and correction. Then he has vessels. The surrounding light is a light that shines even before the first restriction, and therefore it shines also upon vessels that still cannot keep the restriction and have no screen. They are simply desire. But I need to awaken this light upon myself. According to what? According to how much I yearn for it. Let's say I cry out. I want spirituality, the Creator, to understand, to know. It does not matter what I cry out, but that I truly yearn. And through the society, I yearn even more. I want more. According to this, I awaken the surrounding lights. Not according to the desire I received from above, but according to what I awaken in me through the friends. So all the additional desires and yearnings that I evoke, they awaken surrounding light, and it shines upon me. And then I feel that I want, I yearn, I am truly ready for something.
All right, friends, what a pleasure to study tests with Rabash. And these aren't recorded lessons, these are eternal lessons. Our dear Rav, taught us tests for many years with a lot of patience, with a lot of drawings and questions and answers, but thankfully we've grown, and now we are privileged to learn tests with Rabash. No diagrams, no questions before us. It's just this holy text that holds the light of the end of correction. We hear every direction from Rabash, and most importantly, we direct our minds and hearts towards connection. I wish to resemble my 10, and I demand the great light that is hidden in the words of Tess to help me. And that's how the light begins to work, to format our desires in the direction of bestowal.
ישראל, אורייתא, קודשי בריחו חדו. לחיים חברים.
תודה רבה לחברים. אנחנו נמשיך.
Thank you very much to the friends.
תלמוד 10 ספירות כרך ב' חלק ה' עמוד 336 דף שין.
Friends, we will continue
אור פנימי אות מ"ה טור א'
with inner light item 45
עד הוד ועתה נזדכך ההוד. ניכנס לשיעור עם הרבש.
starting from Chesed to Hod. Let's enter the lesson with Rabash.
Hod. From Chesed to Hod, and now the Hod was refined from phase 1. What is he telling us here? That the matter of the refinement of Hod was in two phases. One, from Chokhmah to Chasadim, and two, from phase 1 to the coarseness of the root. It is difficult here. What about the hay? We learned earlier that the hay was given to Yesod. Yes, to Yesod before it was refined. We will see shortly. Now the Sefirah Yesod of Zeranpin has been clarified to us for its vessel is from the phase of Malchut. Look again. This is somewhat of a new thing that he's telling us. He wants to tell us that Malchut has three states. Hod is Malchut, Yesod is Malchut, and Malchut is Malchut. So he begins above. Now the Sefirah of Yesod of Zeranpin has been clarified to us, for its vessel is from the phase of Malchut. How come? It is since the vessel of Hod of Zeranpin is also a vessel of Malchut. We learned the vessel of Malchut that Zeranpin incorporated with Malchut is called Hod, and all the more so the Yesod that follows it. It is certainly Malchut. It is not lower than it. Thus, all of these three vessels, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut, are only the expansion of the vessel of Malchut. They expand primarily because of that above-mentioned Hey that descended from the coupling of Zon of Bina, and also because of the posterior light that remained from the vessel of Hod after she turned her anterior, because of the domination of the posterior of Keter. For these two lights are specific to the vessel of Yesod. Which two lights? One light of the coarseness of the root, the light of Malchut, and the light of Hey.
Something new. What he wants to tell us here is this. Malchut, he says, is Hod, that which is incorporated in Zeranpin. He wants to say that the light of Hod, which is the light of Malchut, is not like that. Hod, which is the vessel of Malchut, had from Hod light of Chasadim, an illumination of Chokhmah. The vessel, that vessel of Hod that descended to Yesod, received a little bit on Chasadim and has no Chokhmah. But when she descended to Malchut, she received a diminution of Malchut on Chokhmah as well. This is why they'll learn that Yesod of Ab is called narrow and long. Narrow from Chasadim and long from Chokhmah. Whereas Malchut also has no Chokhmah. So what is there in Malchut? We'll see later. Look. It's written, all those three vessels, Hod, Yesod, Malchut, are all expansion of the vessel of Malchut only. And their expansion from Hod downward is mainly because of that Hey that descended from the coupling of Zon of Bina. One, and from the light of the posterior light that remained from the vessel of Hod, meaning Chasadim. After she turned her anterior because of the control of the posterior of Keter, it expanded in Keter, and then the coarseness, it has no Chokhmah. So what light does it give it? Root coarseness, because these two lights, the Hey and the root coarseness and Chasadim, are designated to the vessel of Yesod. So what two lights are there in the vessels of Yesod? One, the Hey that comes from Bina, and two, the light of Chasadim that comes after it was not expanded in Hod, now it has Chasadim. So it gives Yesod Chasadim without Chokhmah, which is called root coarseness. This is difficult in all the places. We learn in Yesod of Ab Chasadim, Chokhmah without Chasadim, and here it means Chasadim without Chokhmah. We need to explain it bit by bit. I wanted to describe it. On the one hand, when we talk about Ab being called Chokhmah, then even when I say Chasadim, it's also Chokhmah. And when it says Chasadim, that's a completely different matter. We learn a rule. In each degree, we discern two general lights, Chokhmah and Chasadim. That's a different matter. Or I say, Zaranpin is called light of Chasadim and illumination of Chokhmah. That's a different story. When we say that Yesod has no Chasadim, it means Chasadim of Zaranpin that he doesn't have. What does he have? Because in Parzuf Ab there is Chokhmah. With that Chokhmah, he is only the posterior. So Parzuf Ab, its posterior is also called Chokhmah, even his Chasadim. So we need to discern that Chasadim of Zaranpin is something else, no matter what level I'm talking from. And when I say Chasadim, that the posterior is Chasadim, that's a different story. And the level of Ab Chokhmah is also a different matter, meaning the posterior of Ab is called Ab. Why is it called Ab? So that's why there's a difference in those Chasadim, although they are one name. When he says he has no Chasadim, what Chasadim does he not have? Since he was refined in phase 1, so he doesn't have Chasadim from phase 1. When he says there is Chasadim, it's called posterior. When he says he has Chokhmah, but Ab is Chokhmah. But what we, Chasadim is Chokhmah that there is in Ab, and Chasadim that there is in Ab. Either I say Chasadim, or I say Chasadim that there is in phase 1. Although it's a different name, but they are separate from each other. We should say this. What is Yesod of Bina? If I say the light of Chesed in the vessel of Bina, you find that where is Yesod? In the vessel of Hod. So we could say Yesod of Bina, whereas Yesod of Ab means Yesod of the degree itself. There's no Chasadim there. But this is not written inside. This is why he has a question about it. On one hand, he says Yesod of Bina has Chasadim. On the other hand, Bina up to Hod, expanded up to Hod, meaning Bina has no Yesod. So I want to interpret this way. Bina. When the light of Chesed is in the vessel of Bina, you therefore find that where is the light of Yesod? In the vessel of Hod. Find that Bina expanded up to Hod. Which Hod? The Hod of Ab. Over own face, he does have Yesod. From Bina to Yesod. On the phase of Ab, that Yesod which stands below Hod already has no Yesod. Why? It's only the light of Malchut. But from the perspective of Ab, it's called Yesod. But it's not. It's only word, but it's clear. It's not clear. In that sense, he can explain it this way. He received his light again. Then it expanded in Keter. So it doesn't expand in Chokhmah, in Bina, and Chesed, and expands in Gvura, and expands in Netzach, and does not expand in Hod. And Hod was refined into the posterior to root coarseness. And now it's called expanding in Keter. So Chasadim, so Hod is no Chasadim. So then she gives root coarseness without Chokhmah, only Chasadim, to the vessel of Yesod.
The refining happens by the bitush.
Expanding in Keter. So Chasadim shines. How do I say not expanding in Chokhmah, in Binah, and not expanding in Chesed, expanding in Gvura? So I learned that the vessels that are there now receive the posterior from Keter, Chasadim. So it expands in Gvura and doesn't expand in Tiferet. It expands in Netzach and doesn't expand in Hod. So Hod gives to whom? To Yesod, through the refinement of phase 1. Now, who causes the refinement? That's the question. Because he could say the upper one to the lower one, as we learned. Bina wants to give to Chesed. She, how do we say? Turned her anterior because she wants to give to Chesed. Again, when Hod gives to Yesod, then Yesod it expands in Keter. You find that in all the degrees there's no Chokhmah. Therefore, now in Yesod there's no Chokhmah. That's what it says here. Only the posterior light. We'll see afterwards. In a way, at the vessel of Yesod, yeah, is the vessel of Malchut. That's what we learned. And the light in it is made of both judgment and mercy. Why? Because the posterior light that remains from the Sefirah Hod after she turned her anterior is the harsh judgment, the harder judgment. Then in all the 5 edges of Zaranpin, since it is the vessel of phase 4, Hod is called Malchut from the time of the first expansion. But when it came to him, to whom? To Hod. Illumination of Gar of Tiferet, when it was expanding in Chokhmah, then, on the contrary, it was regarded as Chesed. Why? Because the illumination of Gar turns everything to Chesed when Chokhmah shines. But when it disappears from her, from Hod, the illumination of Gar, only the quality of judgment remains in her. And that quality of judgment, that when there's no Chokhmah that was in Hod, descended to the vessel of Yesod. You should know that this was an innovation, a novelty in the Parzuf, because until now, the quality of judgment was not revealed at all in the Parzuf, in all 5 edges. On the contrary, a lot of Chasadim of the level of phase 1 was controlling the entire Parzuf. But once with illumination of Chokhmah, illumination of Gar, and once without illumination of Gar. But there's no Chesed. But now, the light of the level of the light of Chasadim has already been refined from the Sefirah Hod, and there's only the level of Malchut, brute coarseness. The illumination of Gar also disappeared from the Parzuf Ab, because it expands in Keter. Therefore, all the power of judgment in the vessel of Hod is revealed. And that residue, the judgment, descended to the vessel of Yesod. And you find that the power of the judgment is the innovation that was now revealed in the vessel of Yesod. Therefore, now, all 5 edges that are in Yesod are discerned as 5 Gvurot because of the innovation of form that they obtained in the vessel of Yesod, in a way that now there are 2 phases. 1, 5 Chasadim, which are 5 edges from Chesed to Hod, and the second that these phases of Yesod descended, and they are only Gvurot that have no Chasadim, and they exit the vessel of Yesod. However, he says Malchut is called the quality of judgment, and that Malchut is in the Sefirah Hod. Why is Malchut in the Sefirah Hod? And light is called judgment. So he says, since it draws Chasadim, and also from the illumination of Chokhmah, moreover, the judgment is sweetened, meaning that Malchut draws in order to bestow light of Chasadim in illumination of Chokhmah.
He can receive the light of Chasadim and the illumination of Chokhmah in order to bestow. So what was left of it? Judgment of what it had before. We find that the 5 Chasadim that was before, from Chesed until Hod, they are now in the vessel of Yesod. On the side of Gvura, the 5 Chasadim. That is considered judgment. That's what he said here. So what are you asking about? There's a light of Ab, Chokhmah, and there's Chokhmah, the anterior of Ab called Chokhmah, and there's a posterior of Ab. On behalf of the posterior of Ab, it's considered Vak of Chasadim. It's a different matter of posterior. Those posterior can be in all degrees. Even in Binah, there was light of Chasadim. In the first state, when it expanded in Keter, and not in Chokhmah, and expanded in Binah. So which light expanded in Binah? The posterior light of Keter. That's called the light of mercy. So we find that posterior is one thing and Chasadim is one thing. Now when we say that the vessel of Hod had the light of Chasadim with the illumination of Chokhmah, from what forces? From the coarseness of phase 1. So it means that coarseness of phase 1 could receive in order to bestow Hod, the light of Chasadim, with the illumination of Chokhmah. Now when we say that it lost the screen, that means that it can't receive the light of Chasadim with the illumination of Chokhmah in order to bestow. So what does it have? We say that the Chasadim of phase 1, it doesn't have. The Chokhmah and Ab, it doesn't have, because it expanded in Keter. So what does it have? The light of the posterior of Ab. What is that? Sometimes he calls it Chasadim, sometimes Vak, but it's the posterior. That's called Chasadim. So we have to know that Chasadim means posterior. It means something. So if it's mercy, Chasadim, what is posterior? So you should discern between the Chasadim of phase 1 to the anterior of Ab that illuminates Chokhmah of Ab, from its posterior of Ab that illuminates Chasadim of Ab. That's not called posterior, it's another name. That's why the phase of Malchut that was in the vessel of Hod had Chokhmah and Chasadim, so that Malchut isn't called judgment. Why? Because it has light, the light of Chasadim. It can receive in order to bestow. Receive in order to bestow is called judgment. But when it went down from its place, it couldn't receive in order to bestow Chasadim with the illumination of Chokhmah, so it was called judgment. So what does it have? The light of posterior. It's still not done. However, there is a light of Hay in the vessel of Yesod, meaning what came to it from the coupling of Zon of Bina. As mentioned above, it is a very great light, since from the root of its emanation she is phase 2, since it comes from the coupling of Zon of phase 2 afterwards. When she descended along with the light of Chesed to the vessel of Vak, her level was lessened to phase 1. And now she received the Yesod. She was lessened to the level of Malchut once again. However, since she is from the coupling of phase 2, she is regarded as the light of Chesed, but on a low level. It has Chesed, and it is called a low level. Thus, from her perspective, the 5 edges are regarded as 5 chasadim once more, sweetening the above 5 gvuot as descended to the vessel of Yesod from the residue of the light of Hod. Thus we have thoroughly learned that the light of Chesed, the light of Yesod, is a combined light of Chesed and judgment called 5 chasadim of Gvuot. The 5 Gvuot are from the residue of the light of Vak, and the 5 Chasadim are from the residue of the male and female of the vessel of Binah. They mix and join together in the vessel of Yesod. Bear in mind that all this is done here during and because of the control of the posterior of the vessel of Keter. So what did he summarize for us? That in this Yesod, there's Hay, that is in the coarseness of the root. What did we learn before? That the Hay came before it was refined. So we see from this that after the upper one was refined from Hay, Hod, to the coarseness of root, so below there could be the coarseness of phase 1, and that also refined.
Just like what's refined.
We find that the light of that came from the vessel of Chokhmah, called a male, and Hay is called female. We learned that. That came to Zer Anpin. So what did we learn? That the light of that came in phase 1 is called male, and Hay is the female. Here we learn the opposite. The light that came from phase 1, from the vessel of Chokhmah, that refined to the coarseness of the root, is called judgment. And from judgment, it's called mercy, chasadim. The Hay called female, Nukva is also called chasadim. It's the exact opposite. So that's why I asked the question, that phase 1 came from the vessel of Chokhmah. So that means it's called mercy. And the Hay that was born from the phase 2 of Binah is called female.
It's inverted.
Here we learn that when it comes below, so phase 1 that came from the vessel of Chokhmah is a male in the value of Hay.
In judgment.
And here when it comes from Binah, so it's called chasadim. Why? That's what I asked. The answer that he says it, but it's not clear.
It comes from
He
Bina?
says, since it came earlier, it received the yesod of chasadim, it's considered phase 1. So even afterwards, when it refines in judgment,
It was refined?
in that vessel, there's already chasadim to begin with. That's why the chasadim of the judgment that came now can sweeten the vessel of Yesod that received before it was refined. So we can explain it. That's an assumption. That means that the vessel of Yesod has already been corrected on behalf of Chasadim. Afterwards, Malchut, we can say that it's the quality of judgment also sweetens from the hay that came before it. Now they're both on the same degree.
נעבור לחלק הבא של השיעור, בונים חברה רוחנית.
We'll move to